I understand how desperate folks are. I mean, I met a guy who couldn't go on a job search, had lost his job, couldn't go on a job search because of the high price of gas. Just couldn't fill up his tank. I met a teacher in South Dakota who loved her job as a teacher on an Indian reservation. She had to quit because the drive was too far. It was taking up too much of her paycheck. I know how bad people are hurting.
The price has been ticking up for weeks, as you know. The national average for a gallon of regular is now $3.73. Yesterday, the Energy Secretary of this country, Stephen Chu, said his department is not working on lowering prices directly. Instead, it's promoting energy alternatives like biofuel.
But is the overall goal to get our price?
No, the overall goal is to decrease our dependency on oil.
The question was, is the overall goal to get our price of gasoline down? And the answer was no.
Yeah.
That's raising some eyebrows today.
Yeah, absolutely. The man went straight at it. Is the goal to get energy prices, gas prices down? And the answer was unequivocally no. The president is stuck with an energy team that dates back to 2008. It's spearheaded by Secretary Chu. Back in those days, the goal was fighting global warming, using less oil. And actually in 2008, Secretary Chu said he wanted gas prices to go up to the European level. Well, the Secretary and the President are still in that mindset.
What we are seeing is, a government run for the oil company.
Drivers are paying a heavy price. Administration's failure to enact a comprehensive energy strategy.
Gas prices have more than doubled.
I understand how desperate folks are. I mean, I met a guy who couldn't go on a job search, had lost his job, couldn't go on a job search because of the high price of gas. Just couldn't fill up his tank. I met a teacher in South Dakota who loved her job as a teacher on an Indian reservation. She had to quit because the drive was too far. It was taking up too much of her paycheck. I know how bad people are hurting.
Has something else to worry about, which is rising prices. Gasoline prices are usually kind of a predictor of where general prices are going to go with other types of things like food and clothing.
And when they go up, rarely do they come back down. The price sticks. But listen, this is what's happened over the last 3 administrations. Under the Clinton years, drilling on federal lands, the permits that were allowed were up 58%. George Bush, 116%. In the current administration, they're down 36%. What the president says, though, is that we're drilling more than we ever have. Is that true?
Most of the drilling, it is true that we're drilling more now than ever before, but Bill, almost all of that drilling is going on private lands that don't require government permits. What is also true is that on public lands, on federal lands, where so much of this oil and gas lies, that's where the drilling is way down. And that's so depressing because, given how high gasoline prices are, just think about this, Bill. If we had been drilling over the last 3 or 4 years in the Outer Continental Shelf offshore, if we were drilling in places like Alaska and in places like Colorado, we could be producing a lot more oil and gas. And I do believe that would bring pressure for the Saudis and OPEC to bring prices down.
That's what we're drilling. Now I want you to look at this. The areas in red are places where we could be drilling, where we have the rights to be drilling because all of this is our land, our area. But we're not. So when the president says his administration is opening up millions of acres for oil and gas exploration, much of that private, by the way, you might want to thank not this president, but some prior presidents, because under this president, drilling permits, the stuff you need to get approved to drill in the first place, they're down 36%. I want to echo that again. Drilling permits are down 36%. And for the numbers the president is using to describe the amount of oil America actually has, those numbers are up for substantial dispute. To Jim Engel in Washington with much more on that. Hey, Jimmy.
Hello, Neil. Well, the president says in almost every energy speech that we only have 2% of the world's reserves. That's a way of suggesting we don't have enough oil to make a difference, that it would do no good to drill for more because it could never be enough to meet our needs. Listen.
As much as we're doing to increase oil production, we're not going to be able to just drill our way out of the problem of high gas prices.
Some of us believe the president is trying to suggest we don't have adequate resource here in the United States, which is just not true.
Not true, industry analysts say, because we have far more oil than the president suggests. The president's pointing to proven reserves, which is some 21 billion barrels, but the U.S. is sitting on vast amounts of untapped energy. One federal agency says there's 10 times more, 219 billion barrels, in what is called technically recoverable energy. Another agency at the Department of Energy says there's 20 times that much, 400 billion barrels more. And those in private industry say there are 60 times that amount, meaning some 1.4 trillion barrels in untapped resources. That's energy the government knows we have, but which has not yet been drilled for. Industry experts say we have more oil than Saudi Arabia. The president, of course, has been arguing that he is drilling, that he's committed to more drilling, and that having a lot of oil is a good thing, as he said today. That's a very different message than the one he's been sending to environmentalists who focus on the statements that he's given, where he says he wants to wean the U.S. off of oil. Many of them don't think we should be drilling more. Eric Pica, who's head of the Friends of the Earth, says we are addicted right now. There's no question about that, but there's a question about how we get off that addiction. Several environmental groups today, Neil, loudly complain that the president is trying to have it both ways. One other interesting note, Neil, analysts point out that proven reserves were 20 billion barrels back in 1944. Since then, we have produced 170 billion barrels. And proven reserves are, guess what? Still just over 20 billion, suggesting we always underestimate what we have.